Well, the first win of the Fred Hoiberg era is officially in the books as the Huskers defeat the South Dakota State Jackrabbits 90-73 here at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Now, Robin, there were a couple differences tonight from the Huskers' first two games of the season. What were some of those differences?
Well, a big difference, and it sounds elementary, but Nebraska made shots. And it's not just scoring, obviously, that's goes without saying, but seeing shots go in early, I think, did wonders for their confidence, where all of a sudden, those shots that you missed all through those first few games that were hitting off the rim, whatever, now they went in. And when those shots go in, you start to build a little bit more swagger to you, and you're able to play with more pace, you're able to play just with more energy, and it really translates on both ends of the floor, too. You saw their defense was much improved, and I thought just the overall effort, intensity, and overall determination of this team was significantly better than we saw the first two games. And so for me, it started with offense, and I think seeing some early shots go in really got the confidence level of this team up to where it needed to be, and the difference was they were able to sustain it throughout the course of the entire game.
And you've mentioned confidence a couple times, and Fred Hoiberg in his post-game press conference mentioned that really started with Hanif Cheatham. What did you see from him tonight?
Well, Hanif was a prime example of the effort on the defensive end. Obviously, the scoring was important, put up 90 points. I mean, that's kind of blows out the first two games out of the water. But what the Nebraska did defensively, I thought, was just as important. I mean, they were all over South Dakota State's wings, where there was a lot of defensive breakdowns for those first two games that you didn't see on Friday night. I thought they did a great job double-teaming South Dakota State's post player, what's his name, Douglas Wilson, who was averaging almost a double-double coming into this game. Now, he still got 15 and 14, but it was about as quiet of a double-double with that number that you're going to get, because Nebraska made everything difficult for him. They pressured the ball every time he got the ball in the post and made him work for every single thing that he got. And with the ability to create turnovers, they created 13 turnovers and fast break points, 20-7 advantage there, 16-7 advantage on points off turnovers. Those are the types of things that make Fred Hoiberg's offense what it is. When they can create points in transition through their defense, that's when that offense really gets going. And I thought that was a perfect picture of what this whole thing is supposed to look like. Now, obviously, they still have a lot of work to do, and the competition is only going to get harder and harder as Big Ten play comes around. But this was at least a glimpse that this team is capable of playing at that level, especially after two disappointing debuts to start the year.
And something that the Huskers have struggled with has been making shots from the free throw line and from behind the arc. What did you see from Nebraska tonight that's maybe a little different in those first two losses?
Yeah, still areas that need improvement. Nebraska, what were they? 7-26.
But better, a little better.
But it wasn't the number of threes that they made, it was when they came. You look in the second half when Nebraska was kind of sluggish coming out of the gates, Samari Curtis knocked down a three that I thought really kind of provided some breathing room, where South Dakota State, I think they cut it to 17, and he knocks down a three to get it back up to 20. And all of a sudden, people can kind of the team can take a breath and regroup themselves, whereas before, when Nebraska's blown 14-point leads in the past, no shots were falling. And so, yeah, the percentage, shooting 26.9%, that's still not good enough. And shooting 56% from the free throw line, that's still not good enough. But the timeliness of those shots, if you want to look at a difference between the first two games and this, that was probably the biggest thing. Nebraska made the big shots when they had to, and that allowed them to keep the control of this game from start to finish.
Yeah, and let's talk about that just a little bit more. Kind of in the first two games, Nebraska, when they get down, they really get down. And even when they're ahead, they kind of let teams creep back into these things. But tonight it was a little bit more of put their foot on their throat and not let them back. What did you see there?
Yeah, I thought that was one of the biggest differences of all, was Nebraska's ability to take control early. They jumped out to a 12-2 lead right out of the gates, and then never let go of it. First half they led by 31. That's hard to keep guys locked in when you're up by that much that early. And in the second half, you kind of saw a little bit of that. It was a little choppy at first, where Nebraska would miss 4 or 5 shots in a row, then make 5 or 6 shots in a row, and just kind of go in this little EKG pattern, as old Tim Miles used to say. But the difference was, they found ways to keep it going. Even when they got a little sluggish, they found ways to get that spark, whether it was hitting a big three-point shot or getting to the free throw line to get some baskets or making a tough stop on defense. Those little things that they were not doing hardly at all through the first two games, Nebraska did a whole lot of it tonight.
All right, and lastly, what are you looking for in the next couple of games for Nebraska? What's next for them, and what do you want to see?
Yeah, they're got only a couple more tune-ups, quote-unquote, before things get for real, because start of December, that's when you're going to Georgia Tech. That's when you're going to Creighton. That's when Indiana and Michigan State come up on the schedule. So things are going to get for real very quickly for this team very soon. So just getting this game and a performance, start to finish, top to bottom of this level is so important. Especially after what happened the first two games, just for the overall morale and confidence of this team that finally they saw a reward for their efforts in practice. They apparently came back and had some great practices, which we'll save the football stuff for away from that. But anyway, they had great practices, and they actually translated it when it was for real in a game. And so I think just having that under their belt, that is your first step in showing, this is what happens when you do what we tell you to do. When you do the things in practice, it happens in the game, and then, all of a sudden it kind of just builds and builds from there. So they got to keep it going. Obviously, you cannot regress from this, especially, with the level of competition about to get much bigger here in a few weeks, but definitely a first good start of the Fred Hoiberg era after you kind of forget about the other two.
After we forget about the other two, you're right. Well, that's all we have from PBA here tonight. Reporting for Husker Online, for Robin Washut, I'm Grace Harmon.